All right, so today's video is going to be about at least a portion, a very tiny little slice of how psychotherapists operate. Now, in order to be concise for time and everything else, I spoke a little faster than usual, but just to give you the picture of how these interventions work. With that said, during the video, we had a couple of additional problems associated with filming it, and that first had to do with me trying to utilize this brand new DJI Action Pro 5 camera. I had just cleared the tutorial section and everything was going well. Hit the recording button, the timer went on, it looked like it was recording, but I think after the tutorial section, it needed one more reboot for it to function properly. So I looked on my card later on and noticed that the second recording perspective was missing. And the final note I'm going to say before you see this video that goes over OARS, which is open-ended questions, positive affirmations, reflective listening of both content and affect, and summarizations, is the fact that I touched the nerve when it came to my wife. So the whole premise of the fake psychotherapy session was supposed to talk about a fake issue. Unfortunately, my wife pursuing a master's degree in her higher education was something that she actually wanted to do. And as you'll see throughout this video, she did water up a little bit. And I purposely didn't pursue the reflection of that affect or that emotion that would have made the matters worse. Yes, we were able to process what was going on afterwards, and I did have that long conversation with my wife, and we decided what we wanted to do when it came to all of that. However, throughout the video, please note that this is supposed to be a fake psychotherapy session. And it's also one of the reasons why psychotherapists do not perform psychotherapy on their loved ones. All right, with that said, enjoy the video. All right, so one of the questions I typically hear from a lot of my clients is, what exactly is a psychotherapy intervention? Now, even though nothing can replicate over sometimes 10 years of experience, when it comes to your personal psychotherapist that typically either has a master's or a higher degree, I'm going to try to explain one small, tiny little facet when it comes to the work that we do, which is OARS. And that's open-ended questions, positive affirmations, reflective listening of both content and affect, and summarizations. So with that said, I want to remind viewers today that this is a fake psychotherapy intervention, meaning that my wife, who's here with me today, is going to present a fake story, right? So this is something that's not really going on in her life right now, and I'm not her psychotherapist. But in order to show you guys how this process works, we're going to get started, and I'm going to do a little mock session right now. So let's get started. All right, Lize-Mari, so I want to thank you first for making on time today. So I'm really impressed that, especially with all the paperwork I had you do, that you're able to pull that off. So great job. And with that said, if you don't mind me asking, what brings you in?
Hi, Adam. I'm very happy to be here. Mm-hmm. I need some help, I think. I would like to go back to school. I have a bachelor's degree, but from all the studies from all the online articles, they say that it's better to educate yourself more, go back to school, and I'm thinking about going for my MBA, but I'm just worried about if I'll have enough time to do that between working full time and being there for my family as well. Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you want to pursue a further education when it comes to that MBA, which is a Master's of Business Administration. Okay, that's great. I mean, talk about ambition, huh? That's a lot of long hours, I can imagine. Is that like a 2 or 3 year program?
Yeah, the one that I'm looking at currently, it's all online, and it's just, I don't know, I guess maybe time management, if that's, maybe I don't have a lot of skills in that area, maybe that's something that maybe can help me with, because I would really like to do that and further my education. It's just I don't have the skills, and maybe that's something that you know more than me about.
All right, so what I'm hearing currently is that, especially with this online process, this might be new territory for you. And one of the things that you're worried about is maybe staying organized, staying focused, and maybe being a little bit less scattered. Am I correct?
That's completely right. Yeah. Exactly. You're putting it in better words than I could. I was just thinking about the time constraints and finding time to do all the things, but that's exactly what I'm looking for.
And also, of course, finding all the time to do all those things, right? I'd imagine that raises some anxiety or some stress.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because you have to dedicate a specific time for, do your work and set for your full-time job, and you have to set time aside to go do your schoolwork, and then there's time that you have to spend with your family, and it's just hard for me to even imagine or to begin to take that on, that responsibility of dividing my time pretty much and being there for all the things that I need to be there for.
Yeah, that's most certainly a big responsibility. So with that said, how do you think you're going to get started?
Signing up for courses, I guess, would be the number one thing to do.
Well, that would be the ultimate goal, right? But before that, how would you stay organized, right? I mean, what's the plan in place? For instance, how many courses were you planning?
Oh, maybe one at a time. I don't think there really is a time constraint for me to get my degree in a certain amount of time. So maybe I can start off with one. Maybe take baby steps, start off with one course and see how that goes for a semester.
Okay.
Maybe 2 later on.
Now, is there anybody that could help you come to that determination? Like, I don't know, can you suggest anybody?
Talk it over with my husband.
Your husband? Okay, that's a good source.
Yeah.
But how about the school? Are there any providers or professionals that could assist with that decision making?
Oh, that's true. I'm sure there are advisors at school.
Advisors, okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's a good idea.
Yeah, so when I just said the word advisor, one of the things I noticed real quick was you seemed a little bit more relaxed, like that was a good idea, right? Was that reassuring to you when I said something like that?
Yeah, because I haven't thought about it, because in my mind, I'm just alone, pretty much, making these decisions. Other than my husband, there isn't really anybody, but you're right. You're opening up my mind to that possibility, there is somebody out there at school that might be able to best advise you on this step that you would like to take.
And so one of the things that first came to your mind too when we were talking about staying organized was your husband. Is your husband a big support when it comes to your at-home lifestyle?
Yes, absolutely.
So it sounds like you guys have a really good relationship.
Yes,
well, that's
I do.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That must be really hard to pull off. How do you do it?
Just being, open and honest and coming to him with your fears and concerns and letting him know.
Okay, so between, you trying to stay focused on your family, your pursuit of harder and higher education, and of course the great relationship that you have with your husband, it seems like you're a really hard worker. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and I don't want my time spent that I might have to do my schooling to interfere with my work, the work that I'm supposed to be doing. So to try and keep those separate so they don't inflict on each other. But then I really love my family. I don't want to take time away from them either.
Right. And so when you kind of put your hands around right now, it kind of seems like, your family's in one corner, your educational pursuits are in another, and then of course trying to maintain that relationship with your husband, right?
Yes.
It's almost all over the place.
Yes, it is.
Wow. Yeah.
So just trying to bring those all together, so that, trying to keep them separate, but also focusing on them as a whole too.
That's important to you. Yeah. All right, so just to summarize what we just talked about, one of the reasons that I brought you in today had to do with the fact that you're trying to pursue a higher education. There's some fears, concerns, and stressors associated with that, of course, which is completely understandable.
Yeah.
And of course, there's resources out there when it comes to how we can, proper plan and develop your educational pursuits, right?
Yeah.
An advisor being one, talking it over with your husband, who's amazing. It's very attractive as well, I hear. So. Great.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So with that said, we'll put that plan in place, and I'll see you back in about a week.
Sounds good.
Is that okay?
Thank you so much.
Until then.
Thank you.
All right. So before we get started, let me break down what OARS actually is. Again, it's a psychotherapy intervention that is used regularly with most clients. Most great psychotherapists will tap into this at least every few dozen seconds. So this material actually came from the Center for Health Training back in apparently 2010. And it comes from a lot of those motivational interviewing books, like the one that was referenced here back in 2002 by both Roenick and Miller. If you're looking for, some of the secret sauce associated with what makes a good psychotherapist, I highly recommend that you check out some of their published works. With that said, let's get started. So when it comes to OARS, the first letter is O, and that represents open-ended questions, also known as Socratic questioning. You can lure a lot more important insight and detail by providing simple open-ended questions as you would forced answer responses, right? Or closed questioning, which would be, for instance, are you happy today? And that would be like a yes/no response. What is your favorite color? If it's blue, then that's a forced answer response, right? When it comes to what brings you in today, well, that's a question that has an open end to it, right? Where a person can respond in a myriad of ways, and they can offer more than one response, a response leading to another response. So typically, if we can, and we certainly can get away with it, we will try to most frequently use open-ended questions when we can. And yes, we still do offer closed questions when it comes to details that we still need, or we're trying to figure out whether or not we're on the right track. All right, so the next letter is A, and that typically represents positive affirmations. Now, it can represent giving the interviewer a compliment, or the participant, or also known as the client, but it also can take the form of nonverbal attending skills, right? Nodding our head, going right? And all the body language that can be associated with that, which is leaning forward as well. When it comes to this reflective listening, well, that can take the form of both content and of affect, right? So content would be the actual words that are spoken. Like, for instance, I want to lose weight. Well, in that session, you might hear that therapist say, hey, listen, so it sounds like you want to lose a few pounds. That would be a reflection of content. If they say that I want to lose weight because I feel miserable all the time, then that psychotherapist would respond indicating that it sounds like your weight makes you sad very, very frequently, right? So that would be a reflection of the affect or the emotion behind such a statement. And then at the very end, summarizing, most people, especially when they're upset or they're trying to build a relationship with somebody, the number one thing they want to do is feel like they've been heard, right? That they're understood, that somebody gets them. And the best way to do that is to literally, like a parrot, feed back some of that information to them. And summarizing can be paraphrasing too, so it doesn't have to be verbatim what was spoken, almost like a robot. It can most certainly be in your own words to signify, again, you're drawing into your own personality when it comes to providing that response. All right, so let me scroll down slowly down this manual. This way you can see some examples, right? So open-ended questions, I don't think you need an example when it comes to that. But affirmations, right? There's that body language and posture and eye contact. Facial expressions are really, really important. And also statements associated with appreciation and understanding and that positive feedback that clients are looking for, right? I indicated what a great mother my client, also known as my wife, was. So you're going to see that a lot when it comes to most psychotherapy sessions. And here are those reflections. So some things that you're not going to see when it comes to rolling with resistance, also known as accepting the client's worldview. So it's not uncommon, especially early in this therapeutic alliance, that clients are not going to agree with their therapist. And most certainly, a therapist may not agree with what a client is saying, right? Like, for instance, some type of conspiracy theory. I hear those all the time. Some of them might be true, but a lot of them aren't. And with that said, when it comes to having to deal with something like that, we often choose not to respond, right? To, applaud them, to affirm their feelings, but not to go into our view of whether or not that's distorted or inaccurate. And that's rolling with resistance, right? So here are some of those more advanced interventions that we're not going to discuss today. But again, they are there and your therapist will be using them. And then there's that summarizing again, right? And again, there's more advanced forms of summarizing. Down here, this one I don't see too often, but I really do like it. And that's this D, develop discrepancies, right? So eventually, not right off the bat, but maybe, the third or fourth session, once you establish a really good rapport with the client, you will see this used more often where a psychotherapist will, almost like Columbo, acting silly or stupid, dare I say, will ask rhetorical questions. Well, for instance, you showing up late to work, how is that helping you? And of course, the client would respond being like, well, it's not. And that's just us pointing out discrepancies, right? Where, you want to get a promotion at work, but if you show up 15 minutes late every single day, it's not going to happen. It's not us acting stupid per se. It's us trying to evoke your own statements associated with that behavior. We want you to kind of tell us what your value and belief system is associated with such a response. All right, and there you have it. Well, there you have it. Just one of so many interventions a therapist can choose from. Even though OARS is 4 simple letters, it signifies a great deal of a therapist's time and minute-to-minute interventions with a client. Do clients want to be heard? Do they want to be understood? Well, this is one of the best formulas to use to make that happen. All right, and going back to that rolling with resistance, right? That part that we were discussing that had to do with a therapist needing to accept the worldview, or at least the initial worldview of the client. One of the ways that we kind of determine how to use OARS and what to say and what not to say also depends on the client status. For instance, typically speaking, a client that's a visitor in treatment will find at least one blemish, or at least come up with a blemish, or one thing that they don't like about their therapy to tell their spouse as a means to get out later on, or as an excuse to discontinue treatment. And so what do you do with that, right? Those little statements, those little critiques that have no merits, well, that's up to the therapist, right? And sometimes doing nothing at all and continuing to focus on that therapeutic alliance is the right recipe to choose. With that said, hopefully you learned something with today's lesson, and I'll see you on our next episode.